Over the past 5 games, all wins by the New York Mets, fans of the Amazons may have gotten a glimpse of what the future might look like. The Baby Mets, a.k.a. Francisco Alvarez, Brett Baty, and Mark Vientos, helped to spark victories. But how key are the Baby Mets to the team's success going forward? Let's discuss with a columnist, anchor, and associate producer for CBS Sports Radio. That would be Jack Stern. Jack, glad to have you here to talk some Mets baseball. How's it going, man?
It's going fantastic. It's 70 degrees in Brooklyn, which is always a good thing, and I'm happy to be here with you today, Dexter. Thanks again.
And I forgot to mention, Jack, fellow Brooklynite. You know I always like that, fellow Brooklynite. All right, Jack, you recently wrote a column about the Baby Mets, and you spoke to the Mets Director of Player Development, Kevin Howard. What does Howard think of the development of these young players and their ability to produce at the major league level?
Well, the biggest thing about Kevin Howard's development and his philosophy in terms of being in charge in that specific capacity, Dexter, is that he believes that guys need to be groomed from day one. And that comes with teaching them habits, teaching them tendencies, teaching them how to be big leaguers, really, because a lot of these guys, remember, are coming from high school, are coming from college, places where they certainly didn't have the type of routine and pressure that they have once they're drafted by a big league ball club. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that he emphasizes from day one. And the other thing that I think goes without saying kind of is that it's very important for these guys to be able to get reps. I know that a lot of fans, a lot of people in the media potentially are clamoring for guys to get called up, but the big thing that he looked at when considering bringing up Alvarez, Baty, and Vientos is, are they going to be able to get everyday at-bats? And at a point in time when the answer was no, I don't think it was worthwhile to bring them up from Syracuse because they would not have that type of an opportunity with the big league ball club. When they broke spring training, we got a little bit of a dose last year in September, seeing Alvarez, Baty, and Vientos, but they weren't necessarily perceived to be ready to play every day at the big league level. I think once Baty got off to a really hot start down in AAA Syracuse, then the pressure kind of turned up a little bit. The same can be said for Alvarez and Vientos, and that's why I think he ultimately ended up making that decision and bringing up all three of those guys.
Yeah, and it's important to get the reps, especially when you're up here at the big league level for sure. Now, we've seen a small sample size, Jack, with the production of the Baby Mets thus far. How much is their success on the diamond tied to the success of the Mets in 2023?
Well, I'll put it to you this way, Dexter. It's not going to be the sole determinant of how successful they are, right? They already have the core of Alonso, McNeil, and Francisco Lindor as well, who they signed to a 10-year contract. So I think they're going to try and rest on the shoulders of those guys. Now, with that being said, I think having young guys who are coming up through the system and are able to be productive on a day-to-day basis at the big league level makes a world of difference, right? I mean, we saw them have a couple tough series to begin the month. They lost 2 of 3 to the Nationals. They were swept by the Tigers. And then everyone out there was like, oh, here we go again. All of a sudden, they call up these young guys. They start hitting. They start knocking the ball out of the ballpark, and everyone looks like they're playing just a little bit better. And they're going to rely heavily on the arms of Verlander, Scherzer, Quintana when he comes back as well, and Carlos Carrasco. That's why Steve Cohen went out and spent over $100 million on those guys combined. But they're going to need to score a lot of runs as well. And as the season goes on and the bullpen gets a little bit more taxed, you have to place a premium on putting runs on the scoreboard. I think we've seen that the Braves can do that. The Phillies can do that. They have a lot of power hitters such as Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber in their lineup. And if the Mets are going to be competitive, not just in the National League East, but the National League as a whole, because I think that's the expectation this year. Everyone was disappointed when they won 100 games last season, and then were bounced by the Padres in the first round of the playoffs last year. That's why it's a whole lot more important for these young guys to get some production and take a little bit of the pressure off of everyone else in the lineup.
No doubt about that. All right, Jack, let's go back to the future again here, okay? The Mets fans, they surely got their eyes on 22-year-old shortstop prospect Ronny Mauricio, who's also playing some second base and has been producing with AAA Syracuse. How likely is it that the Mets lineup gets even younger and Mauricio was called up here? How likely is that to happen?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question that right now doesn't have an answer. But I will say, Dexter, when I spoke with Kevin yesterday, the words that he said to me, and I'll repeat them verbatim, he's not in a position where he's going to go out and steal anyone's job, right? They like what they have with Lindor at shortstop. Maybe Mauricio is able to see a little bit of time there if he is called up and you want to give Francisco a day off. But his primary fit initially, at least, is going to be as a second baseman and potentially a DH. Right now, you have two guys who are kind of fitting that hybrid infielder DH type role in Beatty and Vientos. So I don't know if he's going to be able to get those opportunities. The easy answer to this question, Dexter, is that I think we will see Ronny Mauricio at some point in the season, but I don't think it'll be as soon as fans expect it to be. He still has a long way to go defensively. He hasn't gotten a ton of opportunities to play second base. As a matter of fact, he just made that transition this season, so he hadn't done it at all previously in his career at any level, whether it be overseas in the Dominican Republic or the minor league system. So there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. And I think if we've learned anything with other teams in the division, you see it with the Phillies, as a matter of fact. Yeah, you can bring in offense. The Phillies did just that when they signed Trey Turner and allowed Gene Segura to walk. But then they had to move Bryson Stott to second, and he's really had a tough transition. And speaking with people around the league, it's much easier to make the transition from second base to shortstop as opposed to the other way around. So I think the learning curve there defensively needs to be flattened. Mauricio needs to show that he can be an everyday player. But once I do think he proves that, he's going to be able to come up and his bat will certainly play out with the big league ball club. And I think as a result, you can move McNeil either to right field or left field and then cut either Canna or Marte, which I know fans have been clamoring for a while simply because they are old and they haven't been very productive at this stage of their career.
Yeah, fans like the youth. They like these baby Mets. They'd like to see another member of that club join. The future is bright, or at least looks bright right now with the youth of the Metropolitans. We appreciate the article. It was absolutely fantastic, Jack, and I encourage everybody to take a look at that. It's a really good take on how the future of the Mets is with their young players and also what that can do for them going forward. That is Jack Stern, associate producer, anchor, columnist for CBS Sports Radio. Jack, thank you for the time. Really appreciate it.
Jack of all trades. That's what you can call me, right?
I like that.
I think that's an appropriate nickname.
I'll have to use that next time you come on. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.